Welcome to 843 TV. I'm your host, Will Wareham. I'm coming to you today from the Golf Clubhouse on Spring Island. We're joined today by Karl Ohlandt, who is a nature ecologist with the Spring Island Trust, Pam Brickell, who's the Arts Program Director here with the Spring Island Club, and John Strother, who's the broker in charge with Spring Island Real Estate. So stick around for more 843 TV, where communities come to speak.
843 TV, where Bluffton comes to speak.
Where Spring Island comes to speak.
Where Hilton Head Island comes to speak.
Where Beaufort comes to speak.
.843 TV,
where communities come to speak. Welcome to 843 TV. We're now joined by Karl Ohlandt, who is a landscape ecologist here with the Spring Island Trust. Karl, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Well, you know, one of the first things I noticed when driving through here is how much you embrace nature and what it looks like native landscapes and native plants. Why is it important to landscape with native plants?
Well, because those plants are adapted to our local conditions, so as far as pests and the amount of rainfall and water they get, and they don't need as much fertilizer and that sort of thing. And also because they're important to the local wildlife.
Right.
The wildlife uses those native plants for food and shelter and things like that, so that's an important connection.
And how do you execute that here on Spring Island?
Well, we actually, certain parts of the properties, the residential properties, we require native plants. Not the entire property, but so we require that so that those residential areas look just like the natural preserve areas. And just as importantly, we don't allow the planting of non-natives that can become invasive.
Okay, so you don't allow it?
That's right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now, is it true that native landscapes don't require management?
Well, no. Actually, there's any kind of landscape, but there's a natural process called succession where plant communities change over time. It's a very dynamic system. So if you don't do anything, you could end up with a very wild, very overgrown condition.
Sure.
You know? So yeah, you do need to manage those, and that's a very important aspect of what we do here.
Okay, okay. And then, you know, as you're driving by, you know, as we're coming to the club, I passed a number of nature preserves and gardens and stuff, and one of those gardens is called the Trillium Garden. Can you tell us more about the Trillium Garden?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a very unique area on the island that has a great concentration of plants kind of rare to a sea island like Spring Island is. Has a lot of trillium, Madamasco lily, bloodroot, mayapple, things you might consider more upstate plants. But these areas have been somewhat protected over history from agriculture and from, you know, hard management, fire, things like that. So they're managed a little differently than some of the other areas, and have become very special. We call it a garden, but we didn't design it.
Okay.
It was divinely designed,
Really?
I guess you'd say.
Okay.
So it's a beautiful place, and it's been a great place for a lot of the artists and so forth to have appreciation for. We've developed a guided tour through it, signage and brochures for it, and there's some great artwork in those. Actually, that was done by Pam, who's doing this.
Yes, it was a great project. It was
Cool.
thrilling to be a part of it, and you do stop there because the trillium are blooming now, and it's just gorgeous.
So the Trillium is a plant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's a small plant, and as the name would imply, trillium, all the parts of it are in threes.
Okay.
The leaves are threes, the petals, the bracts, everything is threes. And it's a beautiful color, and about maybe 6 inches tall. They're fairly small, but just blankets the forest floor.
Wow.
And this time of year, there are no leaves on the trees. They're deciduous trees there, so the sun is able to get down to the ground and sort of wake them up a little earlier.
Cool. Cool. So I also noticed that it looked like there may have been a fire in the nature preserves. Was that on purpose? Was that?
Yes, yes. I endeavor that all of our fires are intentional here if they are done in the preserves, and we manage. I talked about the succession earlier and about how the systems are very dynamic, the plant system. So this fire that we put through there, a prescribed fire, actually stops that process at a certain stage and creates an understory with a lot of diversity, a lot of herbaceous grasses, flowering plants, things like that. We don't do that in all the areas. Like I said, the Trillium Garden isn't burned, but we do that in a lot of particularly pine forests and pine savanna areas. And that's one of the systems that most of our rare species come from, because in other areas throughout the state, they aren't allowed to be burned and aren't able to burn them. So we lose a lot of species by doing that.
Huh. Okay. And then is it true that the fire came close to the golf course?
Well, and again, fortunately, that was intentional.
Okay.
The golf course recently was renovated, and they incorporated a lot of our native plants and native grasses. And the whole concept, unlike many golf courses with this one, is that it's like playing through a nature preserve.
Yeah.
So when we manage the nature preserve next to the golf course, we take the management right up to the edge of the turf.
Okay.
So yeah, the fire did come up close, but it was intentional.
And all that's intentional.
Jay took me out there, the golf course superintendent, and he was telling me about how he collects seeds from the plants and propagates them and then puts them back out. I mean,
Absolutely.
I've never heard of the golf superintendent doing it. They pretty much live on
Carl
both
trains
sides.
him well.
No,
sorry,
he
Jay.
does. And we actually have a program where we work with him on that, but we have a native plant program where we collect seed and plants and propagate, have a greenhouse and nursery, and a lot of things we grow we actually do put back out on the golf course, as well as in people's residential landscaping. So it's fantastic. I mean,
It is. It's the most natural looking golf course I think I've ever been on, and it's just amazing out there what y'all have done.
And hopefully interesting to play as well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you very much, Carl, for joining us today and informing us a little bit more about all the incredible landscape, architecture, and native plants here on Spring Island.
Thank you very much.
So stick around for another segment of 843 TV.
Or we